It is the 14th of June, and this day in Baptist history we are reading, They Did Not Die in Vain. Our passage of Scripture is Romans chapter 12 and verse 11. Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. The sacrifice of many faithful missionaries in carrying the gospel to the Congo has gone unheralded by the world in general. Tragically, even few Baptists are aware of the great price that has been involved. The British Baptists are especially to be commended for their vision for that needy field. Thomas James Comer, T.J. Comer, as he was known to his friends, was only 34 years of age when he died, and I quote, "Yet, into a brief space of time he had crowded so many adventures, living so energetically and intensely, and with such devotion that he had an influence on his generation out of all proportion to his years." End of quote. T.J. Comer was born in Camberwell, England in 1852. His parents were members of the Baptist Church in Denmark Place. The youth attended school locally until his 12th year when he entered the workforce at his father's shop. His mother died when he was in his youth, and his Sunday school teacher took great concern in the lad's spiritual well-being. While still a teenager, the young man had an unusual interest in missions and enrolled in evening classes at Spurgeon's College that he might study Latin and Greek. In his 16th year, T.J. was baptized. Soon he began to teach Sunday school and entered into door-to-door visitation and tract distribution. During the days of his youth, a great expansion in the missionary program was being experienced by believers. The religious tests that had excluded dissenters from Oxford and Cambridge universities were abolished. Henry Stanley's exploits in traveling in the heart of Africa were widely reported, and David Livingstone's remains were borne for miles by African friends that his body might be buried in Westminster Abbey. During that period of time, Comer enrolled in the Baptist college known as Regent's Park, and upon his completion in 1875, he applied under the Baptist Missionary Society to serve in the Cameroons. The eager 24-year-old missionary appointee sailed for Africa in November of 1876. His 41-day voyage was uneventful except for a stop in Sierra Leone, where he met Alfred Saker, the hero of Cameroon missions. T.J.'s own labor began in the Cameroons, but 2 years later, word was received of the offer made to the British Missionary Society by Mr. Atherton to finance new work in the Congo. The mission board determined that the Congo should be investigated, and thus George Grenfell and T.J. Comer were sent. The two men made a brief exploratory trip, and in 1878 they attempted a second journey. Both Grenfell and Comer were overwhelmed with the potential awaiting them there. Comer returned to England to report, and his account stimulated great interest in the Congo as a new field of service. He had seen areas that no white man had ever beheld. Volunteers were obtained, and H.E. Grutchington, W. Holman Bentley, and John Hartland were all given approval to go. T.J. married Miss Minnie Rickards, daughter of his Sunday school teacher, and the party of 5 was sent out with a great farewell. Reaching Banana, the party divided into 2 groups for the journey to San Salvador. Mrs. Comer contracted meningitis, and the young bride was dead within 4 months. This was but the first down payment of many in establishing the gospel in the Congo. On a trip shortly after, Mr. Comer was shot and wounded. Mr. Grutchington was sent back to England to obtain new recruits, and Comer, Bentley, and Grenfell set about planting mission stations on the lower river. The presence of death was very real to the missionary pioneers, and several times T.J. fell seriously ill with a fever. John Hartland had died along with 2 engineers who had been sent out to assist with the boat that Mr. Atherton had given for navigation inland on the river. At this time, T.J. had the joy of welcoming his younger brother Sidney to Africa as a missionary partner. T.J.'s health was again imperiled, and it was apparent he needed to get away to a better climate. Thus he left the Congo, stopping in the Cameroons to visit his sister Carrie, who had gone there as a missionary. He arrived back in England in 1885. Some of the English believers had begun questioning whether the price necessary in sending the gospel was too great, inasmuch as so many choice missionaries had died. TJ's enthusiasm for the Congo, however, was contagious. Volunteers continued to present themselves, and TJ returned to the field accompanied by 5 new recruits: his brother Percy, Philip Davies, J.E. Biggs, John Maynard, and Michael Richards. Soon after reaching the Congo in October of 1885, news of the death of his sister reached TJ. His wife, 1 brother, and now his sister had laid down their lives for Africa. Other deaths, too, had occurred. Disaster would strike again, for 2 other recruits died within hours of each other. TJ wrote his father that this distress had quite unhinged him, yet he felt he must push on. But it was not to be. On June 14th, he was again attacked by severe fever, and he, who was called the man who hurries about, was taken to Buma on the coast that he might board a ship for home. However, he would never see the shores of his native Great Britain again, for he died at sea on a German steamer off the coast of West Africa. T.J. Comer did not die in vain. He, with a multitude of other British and American missionaries, gave his life in the effort to reach West Africa with the gospel. In 1995, it was estimated that the 14 nations that comprise West Africa had 6,171 Baptist churches, with a membership in excess of 750,000 people. Thank God that T.J. Comer and these other missionary heroes and heroines have not died in vain. To God be the glory.